Okay, so we're moving forward with our next speaker, Aviran, that will tell us a story about AgentSmith, a new species of mobile malware. With the current application monetization tools and the goal for malicious actors to gain a financial edge, there is no surprise that there are massive adware campaigns seen in the wild. Those campaigns exploit the CPM model and committing malicious activities in order to get as many victims as possible into their pool of impressions, clicks, and revenue. In the session that Aviran will show us, we will discuss the evolution of mobile malware, the unique capabilities, methodologies, and approaches observed in the AgentSmith campaign, and provide insight into our investigation. Please welcome Aviran Hazum. He's equipped with over 7 years of experience serving in the IDF Intelligence Unit Corps. Aviran has joined Check Point's Threat Intelligence Analysis team and is now leading the mobile analysis and response team. With the mindset of an attacker or a hacker and intelligence skills, he is now focused on campaign hunting on the mobile front. Please welcome Aviran.
Thank you. Hi everyone, glad to be here. My name is Aviran Hazum, and today I'm going to talk about one of the most sophisticated mobile malware campaigns that we have ever discovered, AgentSmith. But first, a little bit about myself. As I was presented, my name is Aviran Hazum. I have over 10 years in the cybersecurity business, starting with 7 years at the IDF's Cyber Reconnaissance Unit, moving forward to a threat intelligence analyst position at Check Point, and today I am the analysis and response team leader at Check Point's mobile division. AgentSmith, at its core, is an adware, a very sophisticated one, but still an adware. And in order to understand the incentive and the methodology behind developing such malware, we first need to ask ourselves some basic questions. For instance, what is an adware? Generally speaking, an adware is a piece of code that is designed to abuse the monetization process while allowing the actor to get some financial gain. We have an actor that develops an adware. The adware displays ads and the ads generates revenue. But where does the money come from? In the app monetization process, we have 4 major participants. First, the advertisers. Those are the ones that have some sort of a product that they wish to promote, and they are willing to pay for exposure. Jumping to the developers, those are the ones that actually have the real estate for displaying those ads. As there are many advertisers and many developers, it's only natural for a middleman to appear, the ad agencies, connecting the advertisers to the developers for a small fee, of course. And lastly, we have the users, us who are willing to pay for free content with ads observations. But how much money we're talking about? Let's take a look at the mobile advertisement market for 2018. That market reached almost $140 billion in 2018 alone. Combining that with 2 facts. First, up to 35% of all mobile malware is adware, and up to 34% of all advertisement traffic is suspected to be fraudulent. That's aggregate into the staggering amount of $47 million finding their ways into the pockets of malicious actors each and every day. With that much money on the line, there is no surprise that we can find sophisticated campaigns trying to get the biggest piece possible from this wealthy cake. Now that we have the basic understanding of what is an adware, let's talk about AgentSmith. If I had to pick up 3 major aspects to describe AgentSmith, I will use those. First, it's an application swapping adware. Second, it utilizes a unique on-device approach. And lastly, it utilizes vulnerabilities to stay in stealth. Let's take a look on how it works. First, we have the user's device, which connects to a specific market to download an app. We will call that app from now on the dropper. And why is that? Because behind the scene it actually drops in and installs another application, the AgentSmith application, on the device using vulnerabilities. Once AgentSmith is installed on the device, it communicates with a CNC, command and control server, to receive the list of applications that the actor wants to infect, the prey list, so-called. Cross-referencing that with the application discovery of all applications installed on the device, once we got a successful confirmation, all we need to do is infect the legitimate application and turning it into a minion of our own to do our own malicious code. This entire process is what influenced us to dub that malware as AgentSmith, just like the notorious villain from The Matrix.
You. Yes, me. Me too.
All right. I swear no more Matrix jokes in this presentation. I had to. All right. So AgentSmith, the campaign had four major stages. The first one will be the initial foothold. The actor tries to get on as many devices as possible. And the logic behind it is relatively simple. More devices means more ads. More ads means more revenue. The next stage is the reconnaissance stage, which is basically searching for other applications to infect. The persistent stage is actually infecting those applications. And lastly, and not a technical stage, is the collection of revenue, the profit stage. Let's take a deeper look. Let's try to take the perspective of the actor from this campaign. How can we get on as many devices as possible? I could come up with two major approaches. The first will be exploiting the operating system or an existing app, something that is already on the user's device. If we can pull that off, we could get access to a lot of devices. Imagining finding the next remote code vulnerability on Facebook or WhatsApp. But those kind of vulnerabilities are very hard to come by. We will have plenty of competition, and those vulnerabilities will be patched. They are not suitable for this mass distribution as we are looking for. Or we can do a complete 180 and develop our own cover application. If we can do that, we will have total control over the application's code, but it will come with a hefty price tag. Everything to do with application development, the content, the user experience, the customer service, it will take us tons of resources, and on top of that, the market is filled with applications that have a very low download count. We can be unsuccessful. But what if I told you that within those two approaches lie the third one that enjoys the pros of both, but the cons of none? Let's take a look at the landscape. We know for a fact that local developers have some degree of difficulty promoting their applications on overseas platforms. So what if we jump in as a middleman, as a distributor? Let then the development team think about the idea, the content, the user experience, the maintenance, the customer service, and all that. We don't care about that. They will just provide us with their finished product, their application. All we need to do is insert our own malicious code into that application and upload it to various markets, from which a device can connect to and request the application and provide us with the initial access to those devices. And that's exactly what the actor behind AgentSmith did. They became an application distributor. On paper, this approach works perfectly, but in real life, there is a major flaw in this approach. We are basically limited by the quality of the developed app. If the user uninstalled the original application, we will show no ads, and therefore we will have less revenue. So how can we overcome this? It's simple. Let's detach ourselves from the original application. Let's install a new one. But all we did was transferring the problem from one application to another. Well, not quite. Because if the user doesn't even know that this application was installed, he will be less inclined to uninstall it. And on top of that, we have total control of that application's code. We can make it harder to remove. We can hide its icon, we can hide the application from the app launcher, and on top of that, we can use that application as a playground to infect other applications to increase our revenue. Now comes the reconnaissance stage. which is relatively simple. Just enumerate all the applications on the device, report them back to the CNC server, receive the playlist, cross-reference them, and on every successful confirmation, just start the infection process. But how it's actually done? Let's take a look under the hood of AgentSmith. In order to understand how AgentSmith works, we need to first understand those 5 major models that AgentSmith have. AgentSmith have a lot more models than that. For instance, another model that allows the actor to update AgentSmith's own code. But for the sake of the presentation, let's focus on those 5. First, we have the loader, with the sole purpose of extracting and executing the core module. The core module, given its name, it's where the core of the malicious logic is implemented, communicating with the CNC, receiving the playlist, and injecting code into legitimate applications. The code that has been injected is actually 3 modules: the boot, the patch, and AdSDK modules. The boot is basically just another loader, but in this time, it doesn't run from AgentSmith application scope. It runs from the infected application scope, and it doesn't load 1 module like the loader, it loads 2, the patch and the AdSDK modules. The patch will prevent the loss of foothold on the device, and we will get to that later on. And lastly, the AdSDK, the payload that is this entire campaign is revolving around. Just to sum things up for the meanwhile, we have the AgentSmith application that has the loader. The loader extract and execute the core module. Core module injects boot, patch, and AdSDK into a legitimate applications and start the boot module. The boot actually runs patch and AdSDK modules, and that's basically how, on a higher level, how AgentSmith works. But let's take a deeper dive into each of those modules. First, we have the loader. As I said earlier, with the sole purpose of extracting and executing the core module. But the core module is actually encoded as a JPEG. You can actually see here the header, the FFD8, which is the header of a JPEG, and the rest is just XOR data. So let's just load that JPEG, discard the header, and dexor the entire JPEG. And now we have our own DEX file for the core module. And now let's use the class loader, a legitimate mechanism for Android to handle large DEX files dynamically, and load the core module and initialize it and start it with reflection. The core module, as I said many times already, communicates with the CNC and do all that. But on a successful confirmation, it starts the infection process. And the first attempt is actually decompilation of the original application on the device. As you can see here, the actor behind AgentSmith actually decompiles both of the payload and the original application that it wants to inject. It clashes them back together, and just to show an extra greediness, it searched for 4 known AdSDK modules: the AdMob, Facebook, MoPub, and Unity. And if it finds any of those SDKs inside the original application, it will patch it, so any ads that the original application was supposed to show will not count towards the developer, it will count toward the actor. Once we have everything clashed together, let's just compile things back on the device. But not every application can be decompiled on the device. Not every application is Java-based, and decompilation can be a failure. So we have a backup. Let's go to the second attempt, which is the binary patch. Let's build a new APK that exploits the Janus vulnerability. That's already the second vulnerability that we use in this campaign. In just a few words, the Janus vulnerability is a vulnerability that allows an adversary to change the DEX file, the code file of a specific application without triggering the security signature checks. And all it needs to do is basically push the data at the end of the DEX file, which Art, the Android runtime, actually ignores, so no security checks over there. We'll just put them inside of a semi-zip file, put them at the end of the DEX file, and no matter what option we chose to follow, the result remained the same. An application that looks like an update to the legitimate application, but it still needs to be updated on the user's device without the user's consent. So if we already use 2 vulnerabilities, why not add another one? Let's add a third one called the bundle feng shui, which allows us, among other things, to update an application on the device without the user's consent. So now we actually have our own malicious code running inside the infected application. And we will start the boot. Basically, as I said earlier, just another loader, but this time it doesn't read the payload from a JPEG, it reads it from the zip file at the end of the DEX, and it doesn't load one module, it loads 2, the patch and the add SDK modules. As you can see in the code right here, this is the code that can grab the zip file from DEX, extract it later on, and using the same mechanism as the loader, class loader and reflection to start those 2 modules. But it would be a shame that everything that we've done so far, all the resources and all the investments we've put so far into this campaign will be wiped out by a legitimate update. So enters the patch module. It actually disables the automatic update for that infected application, and it does it with 2 unique approaches. The first, which is the most straightforward approach you can imagine, just monitor the update directory. There is a file over there, good, delete it. No update for us. The second approach, if that application was installed from a market that support this feature, let's just change the settings of the automatic update. For instance, what is the latest version? So 1, everything beyond version 1 is the latest, we don't need to update. Or let's change the parameter that holds the interval between update checks. Let's say, let's change it from an hour a day to a year or even more. And now we get to the, I would call it the disappointment of this campaign. With all the sophistication, with all the vulnerabilities, and everything we've seen so far, everything that in this campaign revolves around this particular payload to actually display the ads to the user. But that piece of code was basically just like any other adware there is out there. It displays ads to the user provided by a remote server, and it's being called every time an activity on the original application is being called. So at that particular moment, we decided to take a zoom out and try to look at the entire campaign, not that particular application. We were able to identify 360 unique droppers with over 25 million Android devices infected that aggregated into the staggering amount of 2.8 billion infections. Just to make things clear, what we count as an infection here is A, the installation of a dropper app, B, the installation of AgentSmith app, and every single application swap on the device. Meaning that on average, the user, victim of AgentSmith was swapped roughly 12 times. This campaign at its peak was able to generate just almost $1 million per day with ad revenues. As you can see from the infection heat map, AgentSmith was able to get to almost every major country in the world, but India had it quite hard. But AgentSmith is not a targeted campaign. This is the more the merrier type of attack. Why India was counted for roughly 50% of all infections. So we did a little digging and found out that this map actually correlates to the usage of a third-party market for Android called 9app, which AgentSmith was used as the primary method for distribution. But even though the usage of a third-party market like 9app can and have produced generous revenue, it will not hold a candle for the official market, Google Play. And we were actually able to locate 11 different versions of AgentSmith in Google Play, but they were dormant. The only difference between the 9app version and the Google Play version is that the Google Play versions await a single command from the server, literally the word infect, which actually, if the command was not received from the server, the malicious code will not execute, thus allowing them to bypass the dynamic analysis of Google Play Protect. They were actually testing how Google Play Protect can identify their malware. As you already saw, there are over 25 million devices, 360 droppers, tons of decompilations, usage of vulnerabilities, and all of those are not as stable as the actor would have hoped. Something somewhere will fail, will crash, and the actor don't want to lose revenue on a failed script. So how can the actor know when something is going wrong? Well, this modern problem requires modern tools. So the attacker actually built a complete AWS infrastructure logging every single activity of this campaign. Behind the CNC front end lies 5 different services. The query processor, as I said earlier, every device actually report to the CNC the list of installed applications. So the actor can just see which application is being installed on the most devices, so he will be able to handpick the next victim. The patch server, as I briefly mentioned at the beginning, is actually a service that allows AgentSmith to update its own code. The logging server and the ad provider, those are another 2 services that the actor used, are actually backed by the AWS S3 bucket that actually logs everything. That's why we actually have quite a lot of accuracy in the numbers and the infections across the entire campaign. But on top of that, we was able to affiliate this campaign. And we started doing that by taking a look at a CNC domain. Luckily for us, the whois information was not anonymized. So, and that same infrastructure was used across all droppers. So all we did was digging into the whois information, and we found a specific company. We took a look at that company, and we actually found job offers that are critical for this particular campaign, but has nothing to do with the legitimate front of that company. So we decided to take a look at every single application that this distributor distributed. Starting from January 2016, when we observed the initial inception of the concept. Jumping to mid-2017, when the dropper distribution received a ramp up across 9 apps. Jumping to May 2018, when AgentSmith received a critical update to update its own code on the fly. To June 2018, when the entire CNC infrastructure migrated to the AWS. And to December of 2018, when we started observing the baby steps of infiltration into Google Play. All the way to April 2019, when AgentSmith actually reached its full potential. I keep saying the actor, the company, and all that, and you're probably asking yourself, well, who is behind AgentSmith? Sadly, I will not be able to disclose this information today, but what I can say is that there's a Chinese company located in the Guangzhou region, I hope I didn't butcher that word, I'm sorry, with a front legitimate business of helping Android developers promote and publish their applications on overseas platforms. Once we were 100% sure that this is the actor, we took another look at the prey list, and we actually found out that the prey list actually contained applications for the distributor competitors of said company. All of the research, along with all of the evidence that we've collected, was disclosed to local law enforcement agencies in China, and was assigned to a prosecutor to build a legal case against this particular company. As demonstrated from this campaign, the mobile device is just another endpoint, just like your PCs, your workstation, your servers. It will be exploited, it will be seeked out, and it needs to be protected just like any other endpoint that you have. Roughly, only 3% of all mobile devices have some degree of security features installed on them. Please make sure that you use a known vendor. There are a lot of fake security products out there. Keep your devices up to date, both applications and operating systems, and always use official markets when downloading applications. Stay safe, everyone. Thank you. And if you would like to read our full paper on AgentSmith, just follow this QR code.
Thank you, Aviran.